So, Jesus at the movies, Captain America. What I'm going to do is, if I can get the technology working, show a short clip from the film, just in case you haven't seen it. Just to get you in the mood.
You do anything fun Saturday night?
Oh, do you want to get that button just there, Mike?
You know, if you ask Kristen out for statistics, she'd probably say yes.
That's why I don't ask.
Too shy or too scared?
Too busy. Was he wearing a parachute? No. Or it wasn't. You joined the shield to protect people. Captain, to build a better world sometimes means turning no one down. That makes enemies. Are you ready for the world to see you? Look out the window. You know how the game works. Disorder, war. All it takes is one step. We're going to neutralize a lot of threats before they even happen. That punishment usually came after the crime. Shield looks at the world as it is, not as we'd like it to be. This isn't freedom. This is freedom. You need to keep both eyes open. Before we get started, does anyone want to get out? Your work has been a gift to mankind. You've shaped the century. I need you to do it one more time. Gear up. It's time.
All right. Mike, do you want to grab that? So, let me just give you a little... Who's seen it? Has anyone seen The Winter Soldier? Couple, 3 people, not so many. What did you think?
Yeah, it was good. It's based on the Robert Redford movies. Is it the Flight of Day of the Condor?
Yeah.
In the movie, he's the bad guy because he was the good guy in the other.
In the other ones, yeah. So, it's the second in the Captain America series, The Winter Soldier. The first one is called Captain America, right? So Captain America is Steve Rogers. He joins the American military in World War II. He's basically puny but courageous. He has a serum, a special serum that changes him. DNA kind of changes him from the inside out. Becomes a fantastic fighter, an amazing athlete, practically invulnerable, and also an all-American good looks and a chiseled jaw. Right. So what do I love about the film? The film's fun, right? It's got Samuel Jackson in it, Robert Redford, Scarlett Johansson, Chris Evans, and Emily Vanderkamp. So it's got a lot of kind of good actors in it. The film was believable. No, I mean, what I mean by that, I think you're looking at me like, what are you talking about? The film was believable in the sense of, I think films work. They create a world for us, don't they? They create a kind of a world that we step into as the audience. And as long as the film stays within the constraints, it becomes believable. The narrative, you can stay in the story. So have you ever noticed that you might be watching it might even be a romance, and then it sets up its own framework, and then a character steps outside of that, and you think, well, they would never do that. Well, once you've accepted that you can take a serum and become Captain America, once you've stepped into that genre, I think it's believable in that sense. It stays within it. The other thing that's fun about the film is it's easy. It's not that hard to keep track of the film. The good guys look good, and the bad guys, they look bad. They're unshaven. They wear nasty masks. They wear black clothing. So it's pretty clear. Also, though, beautifully, the ambiguous characters are ambiguous. So Nick Fury, who is kind of ambiguous in this film. He's the head of the secret superhero organization. He himself has got a slightly ambiguous role, and he looks slightly ambiguous. So, it's easy to just, am I looking at someone handsome? Okay, it's one of the good guys. Am I looking at someone who looks a bit rough? It's probably a bad guy. If I can't tell, that's on purpose. So what is the plot really about? Well, interestingly, the plot is really about trust. Interestingly, the film is about trust. So there's an organization called SHIELD. They develop these massive drone ships, these helicarriers. And what they're doing is they're using super-powered technology to track everything that happens, every conversation someone happens, every email they send. And the plan is to use these helicarriers, these super drones, to take someone out before they become a threat. So that's where that's kind of the kind of I think that's where this film works. There's a political kind of question there, isn't it? It's set in the US, a country with the most power, the most military might, with the most intelligence, a la NSA, who do what? They use their technology and drones to so it's actually quite interesting. It's asking a pretty big question in the background. Can SHIELD, this organization, be trusted? And they kind of act, what's the word politically that's used? Unilaterally, is that right? By one decision. They're developing this technology, right? So it's kind of a political thriller with kind of political and cultural concerns. Can they be trusted? A la Edward Snowden. Really, that's what's going on. People are being tracked. So here's the thing: can SHIELD be trusted? And what you discover, plot spoiler alert? You're probably going to guess it right. SHIELD's been infiltrated by their arch nemesis, Hydra. So that's kind of what happens, right? So the movie asks the question: are the good guys really good guys? Can you trust them? Or are they really good? Are they really in the best interests of people? But it's not just carried through in the plot, it's there in the characters. Who can you trust? So let me give you just some quotes from some of the conversations. Steve Rogers comes back from one of the Captain America comes from one of the early missions, and he says this: soldiers trust each other. That's what makes it an army, not just a bunch of guys running around shooting guns. And Nick Fury, the leader, I should show you a picture of him. That's Captain America, obviously. I don't know. Oh, I thought it was the American flag he was holding onto. It's his shield. Nick Fury's the guy on your left. He's the head of SHIELD, played by Samuel Jackson. He says this. He's got a couple of lines like this. He says, "Last time I trusted someone, I lost an eye." And as you can see, he's got an eye patch on. Nick Fury, after he's been shot by an assassin, hands a special device to Captain America, and he says, "Trust no one." When they discover they've been infiltrated, Nick Fury holds up a picture and says this of a character, who won't spoil this. He says, "This man declined the Nobel Peace Prize. He said that peace is not an achievement, but a responsibility. It's stuff like this that gives me trust issues." It's just there throughout the film. Almost everything that Nick Fury says is about who can I trust? Who's worthy of trust? And I won't trust anyone. He says this a little bit later. Nick Fury says, "Granddad loved people, but he never trusted them." And he talks about how he used to carry a gun in his lunch bag as he walked to and from work. Steve Rogers, Captain America, in his conversations with Black Widow, he says to her, "It's kind of hard to trust someone when you don't know who that someone really is." And then she later on in the film says, "Do you trust me?" And he says, "I do now." See, why does trust matter? See, I think thinking about us as humans, why does this kind of matter to us? Think about how trust actually goes to almost every aspect of your life. So the other day, I bought some takeaway food. Did you realize I was engaged in a massive act of trust? Think about this. Did the young lady who was serving the food, had she washed her hands? The food that was kept in the fridge, was that maintained well? The factory that made the food, the farm that it came from, the way it was shipped, the way it was organised, the way it was kept. Can you see, I have no evidence for whether this piece of food that's about to come off, you say, yes, but they've got a health certificate for their store. Yeah, but that was issued 3 months ago. 3 months ago they were investigating. So so many of our decisions exist in trust. And I don't mean without evidence, but what we do is we rely on the people around us and we hope that they've made good decisions. We actually trust the decisions and choices they've made to live life all the time. But it's not just kind of in transactions, is it? What about friendship and love based on trust, aren't they? How is it that a friendship goes deeper? See, we never can gain enough evidence. Life will keep throwing up new circumstances and new problems. You never know exactly how someone's going to react in a new situation and new forward. So how do you grow a friendship? Well, you grow it with trust, don't you? You see how someone's acted in certain situations, you know enough of them that then you start to make yourself vulnerable and you commit to them. And you have to rely on each other. But interesting thing, there's evidence there, and evidence is really important, it's critical, but you don't have evidence about the future, do you? You just have to rely on people. What is it that turns someone dating into marriage? Well, you never know what life is going to throw at you for the next 20 or 30 or 40 years. What you have to do is make a decision. Will I commit to this person? Will I trust them? But trust is even bigger than that. Trust is actually a life and death issue. See, if we trust in the right people, we stay safe. If we trust in the wrong people, we're vulnerable. Just think of the Germanwings plane crash. Every time you get on a plane, you are showing a massive trust issue. You're kind of just putting it all out there. You're about to get in a thin metal cigar, traveling at 500 or 600 kilometers through the atmosphere, and you're trusting that the pilot knows what he's doing. But it's not just, you don't have to get in a plane, do you? You just have to get in a car. SUV behind me with that big bull bar. Will he stop in time? Will the person who's in front of me, will they do the right thing? We're constantly trusting people around us. And we're constantly deciding that people are worthy of trust. But that's the problem, some people aren't. So what's the film's answer about who do you trust? What do you reckon the film's answer is? Who do you trust? Captain America. Yeah. Basically, it's Captain America. It's Captain America, and it's a little bit people, humanity, kind of, because you discover that half of humanity are working, well, not half, but half of them in the organisation of S.H.I.E.L.D. are working for Hydra, so they can't be trusted. But who can you trust? It's Captain America. Now, why is it? What makes him trustworthy? Well, there's two big things. One is that he always wants to do what is good. Here's a quote from him. He says, "For as long as I can remember, I just wanted to do what was right. I guess I'm not quite sure what that is anymore." So he's kind of postmodern Captain America. But he's not quite sure. But it's more than just that. It's a little bit more. It's that he's willing to pay the price for what is right. And that's, Glenn, again, plot spoiler. At the end of the film, the Winter Soldier actually turns out to be his friend. His friend from the first film who was captured and turned into a nemesis. Yeah, the Winter Soldier. So that's what the film is called, The Winter Soldier. But it's actually not about him. No. It's about this character who's his nemesis throughout the film.
The Winter Soldier's at the back there.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, that's okay.
It's very short. So it wasn't much.
Yeah, Captain America, who's a soldier, Winter Soldier. Yeah, anyway, in the film, you almost could have done without the character. He doesn't add that much except at the end. At the end, it's all about the fact that Captain America will pay the cost to do what's right. And so he offers his life to protect his friend, Bucky. And that's why he can be trusted. He will do good. He will do what is right. He will bring justice, not just when it's convenient, not just when it's helpful, but even when it costs. That's what makes him a hero. See, in the real world, who can you trust? See, people will break your trust, won't they? I mean, that's such a true statement that you almost hardly need to say it. But people will break your trust, won't they? Sooner or later, every person you know will fail you in one way or another. But you know what's equally sad, if not a little bit sadder? Sooner or later, every person who knows you will be failed by you in one way or another. Maybe small, maybe large, maybe accumulation of small things that lead to large things. Interesting, the film explores that people of compromises. And I think that resonates with us because aren't we compromised? Don't we not deliver on things that we say we should do? Not just in the business world, but in relationships. Don't we fail to treat people like to treat them? Aren't we compromised? We have these goals, these desires, these wishes in this relationship, friendship, and yet we compromise. We put our interests ahead of other people, at cost to other people, to ourselves. But here's the thing, here's the tension. People will fail in trust, and we will fail in trust. And yet, what I was trying to say earlier is we can't live without trust. So you can't live in this world without trusting, and yet your trust will be broken. That's a tension, isn't it? So how do you live well? How do you give yourself to people? How do you keep making yourself vulnerable? How do you, in a world where people will fail your trust? Well, here's the Bible answer, actually. The Bible's answer is actually picturing Jesus as a rescuing hero. It's really interesting. This is from the Bible. Let me read this out for you. It's a picture of Jesus that the writer of the book of Revelation sees. And it pictures Jesus as a hero. From chapter 19. I saw heaven standing open, and there before me, whose rider is called Faithful and True. With justice he judges and wages war. His eyes are like blazing fire, and on his head are many crowns. He has a name written on him that no one knows but he himself. He is dressed in a robe dipped in blood, and his name is the Word of God. The armies of heaven were following him, riding on white horses, dressed in fine linen, white and clean. See, here's a picture of Jesus. It's like he's saying, here's Jesus in heaven. If you wanted to grasp who he is and what his role is and what he'll be doing, he's pictured as a hero. Do you notice the language there? The writer is called Faithful and True. See, that's a word that ripples throughout the entire Bible. The word faithful. It means, can you be trusted? And when the word faithful is used, the answer is yes. See, it's interesting. It's saying with the person of Jesus, there's no core and non-core promises. Do you remember that from John Howard when he broke one of the political promises and he said, well, there's core and non-core promises. By describing Jesus as faithful and true, that's what he's called. That's how you identify him. He's saying there are no core and non-core promises with him. There is no political or financial expediency. Well, the situation changed and I just decided that I wasn't going to. No, it's saying, and look what he'll bring. He's faithful and true. And then it says, with justice, he judges and makes war. So it pictures him as a soldier, a warrior, who brings who comes to conquer, not for personal gain, not for self-benefit, not for oil fields or more treasure, but he comes because of justice. See, that's why Jesus is, the Bible's answer is that's why he's worthy of trust. He will always be faithful to people. He will never let them down. And he will always bring justice. Those two elements. He will always bring justice. He will overthrow enemies. He'll conquer evil. And he's a little bit scary. Notice how his robe is described. Dipped in blood. This justice isn't abstract. It's saying in a world where people do use weapons in the wrong way, they do wield information to damage people, they do pretend that might is right and bring injustice and wickedness and evil, that actually matters so much to the person of Jesus that he'll conquer those enemies. His robe is dipped in blood. It's an awful, horrible image if you're on the wrong side of him, if you are someone who brings injustice. But then there's the people that follow him who are wearing white, and that's to show their purity. They may have done injustice, but now they're following him. Now, that's not the full picture. That's a slightly scary picture. But there's another picture earlier on about why this hero Jesus is worthy of trust. And we won't look at that text now because we don't have time. But the other big picture that the Bible uses of Jesus, one is a warrior, the other one is a lamb who's slain. The blood is actually on him. It's in Revelation 5. That's the other reason he can be trusted. Because he actually laid down his life, that's the whole Easter thing, to protect the weak and the vulnerable, to protect the people who are on the end of injustice and who've done injustice. The Bible says that God is holy, justice matters to him. So he sends Jesus as a hero to die, to rescue the wicked and broken. So that's actually, it's interesting. That's where Captain America links right in. See, this idea that a hero would die for his enemies, that was a ludicrous idea in the world until Christianity introduced that idea, that a hero dies for his enemies. No Greco-Roman culture before the time of Jesus would have thought that was sensible. No Eastern culture thought that that was a sane thing to do. No African tribes thought that that was a great thing to do, to die for your enemy. It's actually Christianity that has brought that idea into the world. And interestingly enough, so many of our heroes in our kind of modern culture, that's what defines them. When they will lay down their life, when they will take on the cost for themselves, for others. It's straight out of Christianity. That's the other picture. Jesus is the conquering one, riding on a horse to end injustice for the whole world. But also, Jesus before that, on the cross, as the lamb that was slain, to face the wrath and anger at God, to save people, to rescue people. So that's why he can be trusted. How should that change our lives? How should that help us trust people? Well, think about this. With those two pictures, that means Jesus has got your back. That means no injustice that happens to a person is unnoticed. No evil that's perpetrated will be swept aside. Every wrong act, every evil act, every injustice will be seen and will be dealt with. That's the picture the Bible is saying. So actually that should free us up. It should enable us to make ourselves vulnerable. Not naively, knowing that the world is broken and people are untrustworthy, but to still make ourselves vulnerable to people, to give ourselves in relationship to people, to be open to actually caring for people even if they might do wrong to us, to keep doing right to them. Because you think about what's the other option? Let's say you live life and people do the wrong thing by you. Well, if you can't make yourself vulnerable again, what do? What's your other option? It's to isolate yourself. It's to become cynical and legislative and bitter. And what will that mean? Well, that will make life awful and difficult and will crush you. So you've really got two options in a world of failed trust: to keep being prepared to have people breaking your trust and make yourself vulnerable, or to withdraw from people and become embittered and have this small, tight circle. And even they will fail your trust. So it's interesting in our world. Why do so many partnerships, like relational partnerships, break down? I think because we think this is the person that I can trust. And I put all of my emotions and all of my sense of purpose and all of my identity in this person who's actually not trustworthy. And it fails. Whereas if we know those things are caught up by the person of Jesus, by both his love and his death and his care for us, but also the fact that he will come back and bring justice, that it'll all be seen, it'll be taken care of. Then even when that trust fails and is broken, we, instead of holding on to that hurt and that separating us from ourselves from people, we can give ourselves again to people. We can make ourselves vulnerable again. The hurt doesn't matter. Not because it didn't hurt, or that if a financial partnership goes south, not that it wasn't awful and expensive and costly, it was. But knowing that in the end it'll all be wrapped up. It'll all be fixed up. It'll all be cleared up. It's not unnoticed. So I guess that's the theme. Really, I think Captain America, it's can you trust people? Are they worthy of trust? And the answer is actually no, except for Captain America. The Bible's answer is no, except for Jesus. But actually, when you become a person like him, who follows him, you become like him. You become someone who acts in trust even if it costs you. That's what the Bible constantly calls people who follow Jesus to be, is to be like him and be faithful, be trustworthy. And that means not when it's convenient, but especially when it's costly. Well, let me stop there. I've spoken for long enough. Let me open up for questions or comments, reflections, challenges, clarifications.